The Cold War space race was a period of intense competition between the United States and the Soviet Union that transformed space exploration and technology. It began with the Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik in 1957, the first artificial satellite, which shocked the US and led to the creation of NASA in 1958. The rivalry spurred many technological advances, including the development of intercontinental ballistic missiles, which also helped improve rocket technology. The Soviet achievement of sending Yuri Gagarin into orbit in 1961 marked the first human spaceflight, pushing the US to catch up. In response, President John F. Kennedy set a bold goal to land a man on the moon before the 1970s ended. This led to massive funding for the Apollo program, driving innovations in technology, engineering and computing. The effort culminated in the historic Apollo 11 mission in 1969, when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to walk on the moon. The space race also encouraged international agreements like the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, which aimed to keep space peaceful and prevent its militarization. It inspired a generation to pursue STEM, science, technology, engineering and math, careers, shaping future innovation. Both nations saw space exploration as a way to prove their political and technological superiority. For the US, success in space boosted national pride and global standing. For the Soviet Union, early victories like sending the first human into space were a way to showcase the strengths of communism. Overall, the Cold War space race left a lasting legacy of scientific achievement, international cooperation, and inspiration that continues to influence space exploration today. The space race during the Cold War was driven by both the United States and the Soviet Union competing for technological and ideological supremacy. Scientific research in space, like studying microgravity and cosmic phenomena, motivated both nations as they believed these advancements could benefit their economies and societies. The launch of Sputnik 1 by the Soviet Union on October 4, 1957, was a turning point. Before this, space was mostly science fiction, but Sputnik showed space exploration was real and urgent. The event shocked the US and sparked fears about Soviet military power, leading to increased focus on science and technology education, and the creation of NASA in 1958. Sputnik's beep captured the world's attention, fueling American pride and competition. It also changed how people viewed Earth and space, inspiring new interest in space travel, science fiction, and the idea of exploring other planets. President Dwight D. Eisenhower played a key role by promoting peaceful space exploration and national security through space technology. He supported scientific uses of satellites like Explorer 1, which discovered the Van Allen radiation belts. Eisenhower also encouraged international cooperation through initiatives like the International Geophysical Year 1957-58, and established DARPA to advance technology, including space projects. Under his leadership, the US developed reconnaissance satellites critical for Cold War security. Eisenhower's vision helped build the foundation for a strong US space program and promoted STEM education to prepare future scientists and engineers. This groundwork eventually led to major milestones such as the Apollo moon missions. The space race was sparked by the Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik 1 in October 1957. Before NASA existed, the US had aeronautics research programs like the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA, active since 1915. Sputnik's success was a wake-up call, revealing the urgent need for the US to advance its space capabilities for national security and scientific progress. In response, President Dwight D. Eisenhower pushed to create a dedicated space agency. Congress passed the National Aeronautics and Space Act, establishing NASA in 1958. NASA was tasked with advancing space exploration and aeronautics research, aiming to keep the U.S. at the forefront of science and technology. As a civilian agency, NASA focused on peaceful uses of space for humanity's benefit. One of NASA's early successes was the Explorer-1 satellite, launched in January 1958. Over time, NASA led major projects like the Apollo moon landings, the Space Shuttle program, and Mars rover missions, inspiring generations of scientists and engineers. NASA also collaborated widely with universities, private companies, and international partners, fueling innovation and expanding humanity's understanding of space. A historic milestone in space exploration was Vostok 1, on April 12, 1961, the first human spaceflight. Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin orbited Earth once, proving human space travel was possible. This mission intensified the space race and symbolized Soviet technological achievement. Gagarin became a global hero, and the mission provided valuable data on human survival in space, paving the way for future manned missions, including those to the moon. The U.S. recognized the need to catch up, increasing investment in science and math education through the National Defense Education Act of 1958 to prepare future scientists and engineers. This combined effort in education and space technology ultimately led to NASA becoming a leader in space exploration. In 1958, as a direct response to the Soviet Union's achievements in space, the United States established NASA, marking a significant shift in U.S. policy by centralizing the nation's space exploration and research efforts. This consolidation allowed for coordinated missions and a clearer focus on human spaceflight, satellite technology, and scientific exploration. Early projects like the Explorer program, which launched the first U.S. satellite, Explorer-1, in January 1958, proved that the U.S. could make major contributions to space science. Alongside scientific goals, military applications were a key part of the American response. The Cold War heightened tensions, and advancements in space technology were closely tied to national defense. The U.S. accelerated its missile programs, particularly developing intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, which were essential for maintaining strategic superiority over the Soviet Union. Reliable rocket technology became a top priority, as space exploration was both a scientific endeavor and a demonstration of technological power. Public perception played a critical role as well. The media coverage of Soviet space successes created urgency and demand for a strong American response. This public pressure helped fuel President John F. Kennedy's 1961 pledge to land a man on the moon by the end of the decade, galvanizing national support for the Apollo program. The space race during the Cold War drove groundbreaking technological advances. Rocket technology was among the most significant. The Soviet Union's R-7 Semyorka rocket, which launched Sputnik 1 in 1957, was the world's first ICBM and set the stage for future missions. In the US, the Redstone and Atlas rockets became essential for satellite launches and manned missions, with the Atlas eventually used during the Mercury program to send astronauts into space. Satellite technology transformed communication and space data gathering. Sputnik demonstrated the feasibility of satellites, and the U.S. Explorer-1 revealed the Van Allen radiation belts, expanding knowledge of Earth's space environment. The development of tracking and telemetry systems allowed scientists to monitor spacecraft and collect vital data during missions. Computing technology also advanced rapidly due to the need for complex calculations and data processing. Early computers, primitive by today's standards, were crucial for trajectory calculations, flight system management, and data analysis. NASA's use of the IBM 7090 computer played a vital role in planning and executing the Apollo missions, highlighting how computing advances enabled more ambitious space endeavors. Material science innovations were essential as engineers developed lightweight, durable materials to withstand space's harsh conditions. Advances in heat shields and insulation protected spacecraft during re-entry. Materials like titanium and reinforced plastics improved spacecraft safety and efficiency, with many developments later benefiting industries on Earth. Human spaceflight technology saw remarkable progress, starting with the Mercury program, which aimed to send the first Americans into space. Life support systems were developed to keep astronauts alive in the harsh environment of space. During the Cold War, propaganda played a powerful role in shaping public support for space exploration. Both the US and Soviet Union viewed space as a domain to demonstrate technological and ideological supremacy. In the US, Sputnik's launch sparked fear and urgency, prompting increased funding for science and technology education, as well as space initiatives. NASA's missions were portrayed as national achievements, with astronauts depicted as heroes. Media coverage during events like the Apollo moon landing in 1969 framed it not just as a scientific triumph, but as a symbolic victory over communism. The US government used imagery and rhetoric to promote American exceptionalism, suggesting that landing on the moon proved the superiority of capitalism and democracy over Soviet communism. Ticker-tape parades for returning astronauts generated immense public pride, reinforcing space exploration as a unifying national effort. Similarly, the Soviet Union used propaganda to celebrate their achievements, portraying space missions as peaceful scientific advancements benefiting all humanity, while depicting American efforts as militaristic. Soviet media glorified cosmonauts as heroes of socialism, inspiring pride and encouraging support for science and technology. Both superpowers understood the importance of public perception, using propaganda to frame their space successes as ideological victories. The U-2 incident in May 1960, where a US spy plane was shot down over Soviet territory, escalated Cold War tensions and damaged diplomatic relations. The US initially denied the plane's purpose, but the Soviets exposed the truth, embarrassing the US and giving Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev a propaganda advantage. This incident intensified the space race as the US felt increased pressure to prove technological superiority, accelerating space programs like Mercury and Apollo. Meanwhile, the Soviets marked achievements such as launching Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space, in 1961. The Mercury program 1958196-3 was the US's first human spaceflight effort, designed to restore American confidence after Soviet space successes. Key milestones included Alan Shepard's first American spaceflight in 1961 and John Glenn's first American orbital flight in 1962. These missions sparked national pride, secured national funding, and laid the foundation for Gemini and Apollo programs. In his 1961 speech to Congress, President John F. Kennedy set the bold goal of landing a man on the moon by the decade's end, directly responding to Soviet achievements. This vision unified the nation, boosted support for science and technology, and inspired a generation. Kennedy framed space exploration as both a demonstration of American technological leadership and a venture to advance humanity's knowledge. His speech catalyzed collaboration across government, industry, and academia, ultimately leading to the Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969. Kennedy also emphasized international cooperation in space, paving the way for future joint efforts like the International Space Station. The goal to land a man on the moon was not just about science or technology. It was deeply tied to the Cold War's political and social context. In the late 1950s, the US and Soviet Union competed fiercely for global dominance, with space exploration as a key battleground. The 1957 launch of Sputnik shocked the US, sparking fears of Soviet technological and military superiority and fueling urgent efforts to catch up. President John F. Kennedy's 1961 speech setting the goal to land on the moon by the decade's end was both a strategic move to unite the nation amid social challenges and a way to demonstrate America's technological and ideological strength over communism. The space program inspired national pride, boosted education and technology funding, and captured public imagination, especially among youth. The Gemini program 1962-1966 served as a vital bridge between Mercury and Apollo. It tested critical technologies for long-duration flights, spacewalks and spacecraft rendezvous and docking, skills essential for Apollo lunar missions. Gemini missions improved navigation, life support and communication systems, and helped NASA build a skilled team for Apollo. The program also increased public support, highlighted by Ed White's first American spacewalk during Gemini 4. The Apollo missions faced major technical and human challenges. Developing reliable spacecraft that could survive space conditions was critical, especially after the Apollo 1 tragedy that led to safer designs. Landing on the moon required precise navigation and skillful piloting, as Neil Armstrong famously took manual control during Apollo 11's descent. Communication delays forced astronauts to solve problems independently, showcased by the Apollo 13 crisis, where the crew's ingenuity saved their lives. Apollo astronauts depended on advanced technology for oxygen, temperature regulation, and waste management within a sealed environment. Any failure could be fatal, so systems had to be flawless. Limited food and water supplies required meticulous planning. Training was rigorous, including simulations of emergencies during launch, flight, landing, and re-entry, preparing astronauts for the intense physical and psychological strains of space travel, such as isolation, confinement, and enduring high G-forces. The Soviet lunar program. The Soviet lunar program, launched in the late 1950s, played a pivotal role in the space race. Luna 1, 1959, was the first spacecraft to reach the Moon's vicinity, signaling Soviet capabilities beyond Earth orbit. Luna 2 soon followed as the first human-made object to impact the Moon, marking a major milestone in rocketry. Luna 3 famously returned the first images of the Moon's far side, captivating global audiences and intensifying the competition. Luna 9's successful soft landing in 1966 further demonstrated Soviet prowess and challenged US technological dominance. Subsequent lunar missions included sample returns, reinforcing the USSR's commitment to lunar exploration. These successes were celebrated in Soviet media as proof of socialism's superiority and helped foster national pride. Apollo 1 Tragedy and Aftermath. The Apollo 1 fire on January 27, 1967, which killed astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White and Roger B. Chaffee during a pre-launch test, exposed critical flaws in NASA's safety and engineering protocols. The pure oxygen atmosphere and flammable materials inside the capsule created a deadly risk. This tragedy forced NASA to overhaul safety standards, redesign the command module, use less flammable materials, and improve astronaut and ground crew training. Apollo 1 delayed subsequent missions and altered the timeline for the moon landing. The incident also prompted the Soviet space program to re-evaluate its own safety measures. Public support for the Apollo program dipped temporarily as the dangers of spaceflight became painfully clear. NASA responded by increasing transparency and emphasizing its commitment to astronaut safety to rebuild trust. Media and public perception during the space race. Media coverage in both superpowers shaped public opinion and national pride. In the US, Sputnik's launch in 1957 sparked fear of Soviet technological superiority and galvanized investment in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, education, as vital for national security. Soviet media portrayed achievements like Yuri Gagarin's 1961 flight as triumphs of socialism and human ingenuity, fostering collective pride, and portraying the US as an imperialist threat. This media-driven narrative reinforced ideological divisions and intensified Cold War rivalry, making space exploration a key arena for demonstrating technological and political superiority. As the space race progressed, media coverage focused more on the human side of space exploration. In the US, shows like The Wonderful World of Disney made Apollo missions exciting for families, while Soviet media celebrated their cosmonauts as heroes, inspiring national pride. However, setbacks like the Apollo 1 tragedy in 1967 brought attention to the risks of space travel and pushed NASA to improve safety. The space race was part of the broader Cold War rivalry, driving huge investments in science and technology. After the Soviet launch of Sputnik in 1957, the US created NASA and pushed to lead in space. Apollo 8 in 1968 was a major breakthrough. It was the first manned mission to orbit the Moon and featured the famous Earthrise photo, which inspired a sense of global unity. This mission showed America's technological strength and set the stage for the moon landing. The Apollo program also led to important innovations in computing, materials, communications, life support systems, and photography. These advances not only helped space exploration, but also improved many everyday technologies on Earth. The Apollo program drove major innovations in photography, robotics. It improved camera designs used today in smartphones and professional gear, and pioneered robotic tools for lunar exploration, laying the foundation for Mars rovers and surgical robots. It also advanced simulation and virtual reality for astronaut training, now used in many fields. Apollo 11's moon landing in 1969 shifted NASA's focus from just beating the Soviets to deep scientific exploration of the moon, collecting samples that revealed much about Earth's history. It also sparked international cooperation, like the Apollo-Soyuz mission in 1975, which symbolized Cold War détente and began a new era of shared space efforts. This spirit of collaboration led to global projects such as the International Space Station, uniting multiple nations in peaceful exploration. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty further ensured space would be used for peaceful purposes. The space race also revolutionized education. After Sputnik's launch in 1957, the US improved STEM education through acts like the National Defense Education Act of 1958, funding science and math programs to build a skilled workforce. Schools adopted hands-on learning to inspire future scientists and engineers, and outreach programs encourage women and minorities to join STEM fields. Another milestone was the first spacewalk by Soviet cosmonaut Alexei Leonov in 1965, demonstrating human ability to work outside a spacecraft and advancing EVA technology critical for future missions. Overall, the space race spurred technological breakthroughs, international teamwork, and educational reforms that continue to shape science and exploration today. Alexei Leonov's historic 1965 spacewalk was more than a technical feat. It offered crucial insights into how the human body reacts in space, shaping future spacewalks and spacesuit designs. This bold step was a major psychological win for the Soviet Union during the Cold War, inspiring generations worldwide and proving humans could work outside spacecraft, vital for space station repairs and experiments. In 1975, the Apollo-Soyuz test project marked the first joint US-Soviet space mission, symbolizing a thaw in Cold War tensions. The successful docking of the American Apollo and Soviet Soyuz spacecraft showed that cooperation was possible despite political rivalries. Astronauts exchanged gifts and shared knowledge, with their handshake becoming an iconic symbol of peace and teamwork. This mission laid the groundwork for future collaborations like the International Space Station. The Cold War fueled massive investment in space technology and education, especially after the Soviet launch of Sputnik in 1957 sparked the Sputnik crisis in the US. This led to increased funding for NASA and STEM education reforms, focusing on producing skilled scientists and engineers to compete with Soviet advancements, including Yuri Gagarin's historic 1961 spaceflight. Women and minorities played crucial but often overlooked roles during this era. Mathematician Katherine Johnson's calculations were vital for early missions, while Margaret Hamilton led the development of Apollo's onboard flight software. Their contributions, alongside others like astronaut Guion Bluford Jr., the first African American in space, helped break barriers and diversify the workforce, enriching space program innovations. Overall, the Cold War space race drove technological progress, international cooperation, and social change, leaving a lasting legacy that continues to shape space exploration today. After World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union competed fiercely to prove their technological and military strength, extending this rivalry into space. The Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik in 1957, the first artificial satellite orbiting Earth, shocked the US and triggered the space race. In response, the US created NASA in 1958 to accelerate its space programs, leading to innovations like the Explorer 1 satellite, which discovered the Van Allen radiation belts. Both nations rapidly advanced satellite technology for military, scientific, and communication purposes. Espionage played a critical role, with both sides spying to gather intelligence on each other's space capabilities. The US used high-altitude spy planes, while the Soviets infiltrated American scientific communities. Disinformation campaigns also aimed to undermine confidence in rival programs. The space race spurred major investments in science and technology education in the US, including the National Defense Education Act, boosting careers in STEM fields. It also led to important government agencies like NASA and the National Science Foundation promoting innovation that benefited many industries. However, the race had environmental consequences. Rocket launches polluted the atmosphere, and discarded debris in space created hazards still monitored today. Over time, international agreements sought to minimize space pollution and promote peaceful exploration. Ultimately, the space race symbolized the ideological competition between democracy and communism, shaping global politics, science, and technology for decades to come. The space race between the US and the Soviet Union was more than technology. It symbolized competing ideologies. The Soviets, with early successes like Sputnik and Yuri Gagarin's flight, positioned themselves as champions of science and progress, appealing to developing nations and anti-colonial movements by promoting access and equality. The US, initially stunned, quickly highlighted its own strengths. The 1969 Apollo 11 moon landing became a powerful symbol of American innovation, freedom, and the capitalist ideal. This achievement inspired national pride and was framed as proof of the American way of life. Media worldwide dramatized the rivalry, fueling public interest and shaping perceptions of modernity. The intense competition drove rapid advances in rocketry, satellites, and human spaceflight, laying the foundation for future exploration. Eventually, cooperation replaced rivalry, exemplified by the 1972 Apollo-Soyuz mission and later the International Space Station, showing that collaboration yields greater benefits. The Cold War era also led to space treaties, promoting peaceful use of outer space and banning weapons there. Culturally, the space race influenced literature, films, music, and art, inspiring science fiction and capturing hopes and fears of the era. It sparked public enthusiasm for STEM and space policy, effects still visible today as nations and private companies push for Mars and beyond. Ultimately, the Cold War space race demonstrated how competition can spark innovation, but collaboration ensures lasting progress in humanity's quest to explore the cosmos.